Okay, so let's unpack this. I want you to picture a villain.
Hmm.
Close your eyes if you have to. You're probably thinking of someone chaotic, right? Like the Joker blowing up a hospital or some guy cackling in a volcano lair. Basically, someone who just, I don't know, wakes up and chooses violence.
That's the archetype, isn't it? The agent of chaos, the
Oh,
person who exists completely outside of the social contract.
exactly. But I was going through this analysis of Chapter 2 of Nimona by N.D. Stevenson, and it just hit me. The quote-unquote villain in this story, Lord Ballister Blackheart, he's actually, like, the only responsible adult in the room.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
He's not an agent of chaos. He's more like an HR manager for evil.
It's a total inversion of the trope. I mean, you expect the villain to be the one breaking all the rules, but here Blackheart is the one desperately clinging to the rulebook. He's literally shouting, hey, we can't just go around murdering people.
Yeah, while his sidekick is, like, holding the matches and a can of gasoline. It's such a fantastic hook.
Right.
So for this deep dive, we're really deconstructing these rules of engagement. We're looking at how this chapter just plays with our expectations of what a hero and a villain are.
Yeah.
We've got the graphic novel text itself, some really interesting character breakdowns, and some guides that help analyze all the subtext.
And I think the mission for us today is to look past the surface level humor, which is excellent, by the way,
Yeah.
and really get into the psychology of these characters. We need to figure out why a villain would demand order and what that tells us about the world he's, trying to conquer.
Oh, for sure. And trust me, if you haven't read Nimona, you are in for a wild ride. We're talking genetically modified dragons, mechanical arms, a shape-shifting teenager who treats anarchy like a hobby.
Yeah.
But let's just jump right in. Chapter 2 opens with what looks like your standard evil planning session. Blackheart and Nimona, they're looking over blueprints.
Right.
But the vibe isn't maniacal. It feels almost
Yeah.
corporate.
It really does. Blackheart's plan is incredibly bureaucratic when you look at the language in the source text. He lays it out step by step. We'll attack the city using my genetically modified dragons.
Which, just pause for a second. Genetically modified dragons,
No.
that is a flex. If you have those in your inventory, you absolutely lead with that.
You certainly do. But look at how he wants to use them. He doesn't want them to just burn the city down.
Yeah.
The plan is to have them swoop down, kidnap the king during a parade, and then announce ransom demands from the top of the tallest tower. It's a very classic, very structured approach. He's basically writing a script for a performance.
It's a project proposal. I feel like he has a Gantt chart hidden somewhere in those blueprints. Step 1, kidnap king. Step 2, issue press release.
Exactly. And that brings us to a specific detail in the text that I think tells us everything about his philosophy, the finale of his plan. He says, then it will fly off with the king, detonating the tower behind us for emphasis.
For emphasis. I just love that phrasing. It's so specific.
It is. The source material really draws your attention to that word. He isn't blowing up the tower to hurt anyone. He specifically says they detonate it after they leave. He's using high explosives as punctuation.
It's theatricality. It's about using destruction to, like, bold and underline your message. It reminds me of those old gentleman villains who would leave a calling card or something.
Yes, it's performative villainy. He wants to create a spectacle that proves he's powerful, but he wants to do it cleanly. No casualties, just some property damage and a very, very frightened king. He's operating within this framework of civilized conflict.
But then you have Nimona, and she's basically the audience surrogate in this scene, right? She's just looking at Blackheart like, dude, you are doing this all wrong.
That is the perfect analogy. Nimona represents this modern, more visceral idea of villainy. She looks at his plan and just finds it boring. She says, I'm talking fire everywhere, general chaos.
Yeah, she wants to skip the press release and go straight to the burning.
Yeah.
She literally suggests, we'll murder the king in front of everyone. Then you crown yourself the new king.
And notice how she escalates. She doesn't just stop at the king. She suggests taking out the hero, Sir Goldenloin, too. She says, I'll disguise myself to get close to him and take him out before he knows what's happening.
Which, I mean, tactically speaking, that is the smart move. If you're in a war, you take out the enemy commander. You don't wait for him to suit up. But Blackheart acts like she just suggested kicking a puppy. He shuts her down immediately. No, that is not how I work. You can't just go around murdering people. There are rules, Nimona.
That line right there, there are rules. That's the thesis for his whole character. For Blackheart, this isn't war. It's a sport. Or maybe a profession. It has a code of conduct.
It is so ironic hearing a villain scold someone about the ethics of murder. But it raises the question, why does he care? If you've already accepted the villain label, why are you adhering to the Geneva Convention of Fantasy Kingdoms?
That connects directly to the philosophy of villainy prompt in our source material. The text really asks us to contrast their definitions. For Nimona, being a villain means absolute freedom. The social contract is broken, so she can do whatever it takes to get results.
Right, she's pure impulse. I want result, I use fire. Simple.
But for Blackheart, villainy is about proving a point. He explicitly tells her later, it's not about winning.
Which just drives her crazy. She's like, if we aren't trying to win, why are we even here?
Because Blackheart is trying to shame the system. He wants to show that the institution is flawed. But to do that, he feels he has to maintain the moral high ground, even while playing the bad guy. If he starts murdering people, he just proves them right. He becomes the monster they already say he is.
So he's trapped. He's trying to be the good bad guy, to expose the bad good guys.
Precisely. It's order versus chaos, but the order is coming from the villain.
And speaking of the bad good guys, we have to talk about Sir Ambrosius Goldenloin. First of all, can we just appreciate that name? It's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It is entirely unsubtle. Goldenloin. He is the golden child, the literal embodiment of heroism.
And clearly there is history there. When Nimona asks if she can at least kill Sir Goldenloin, Blackheart gets very serious. He says, no, if anyone's going to kill him, it's going to be me.
That's personal.
Not strategic. That's pure emotional baggage.
Yeah.
And this is where the deep dive takes a turn, because up to this point, you might just think Blackheart is a quirky guy who likes bureaucracy. But Chapter 2 drops this flashback that completely recontextualizes his obsession with rules.
Yeah, the text reveals they weren't just enemies, they were friends. They were heroes in training at the institution.
Best friends, probably.
Yeah.
The two standout recruits. But the institution, which is basically the governing body for all heroes, they couldn't have two top dog. The text says they were pitted against each other.
That word pitted is so interesting. It suggests they didn't choose to fight. They were forced into it.
Exactly. It was a joust. And Blackheart won. The text is very, very clear on this. He says, I knocked him clean off his horse. It was a fair victory. A clean victory. He followed the rules. He won the sport.
He did. But Goldenloin, the text says, Ambrosius hates to lose. And in those panels, you see the moment the world just broke for Blackheart, Goldenloin, in a fit of rage after the match is over, attacks him with a lance.
He attacks an unarmed opponent after the whistle. And he blows Blackheart's arm off.
A permanent, life-altering disability. But the injury itself isn't the real tragedy. The tragedy is what happens next. Blackheart says he always claimed it was an accident. No one could prove otherwise.
So the Golden Boy, the face of heroism, maims his friend because he's a sore loser, and then he lies about it, and the system just backs him up.
The system protects its asset. Goldenloin fits the image of a hero. He has the brand. Blackheart, now maimed and imperfect, is suddenly a liability.
And this all leads to that gut punch of a line. The institution had no use for a one-armed hero.
We really need to just sit with that for a second. The institution didn't reject Blackheart because he did something wrong. They rejected him because of what was done to him. It's just deeply ableist and deeply corrupt. They treat heroism like a cosmetic role, not a moral one.
It makes you think about how we define villains in the real world. Blackheart says, I took the only other viable option.
Viable, that's an economic term. It means feasible or practical. Think about that. He didn't just wake up and decide to be evil. He lost his career. He lost his social standing. Villainy was the only job market open to him.
He was essentially gentrified out of heroism.
In a way, yeah. Society said, you don't look like a hero anymore, so you must be a villain. He became what they forced him to be just to survive.
This changes everything about that rules discussion we had earlier. He follows the rules because deep down, he still thinks of himself as a hero.
Yes. He's clinging to his code of honor because it is the only thing he has left. Goldenloin, the hero, broke the rules and was rewarded for it. Blackheart followed the rules and was punished. So by maintaining his rules of engagement now, he's desperately trying to prove he's still better than them. He's trying to prove he still has dignity.
He's protesting his own villainy by being the most polite villain in history.
Exactly. And then in walks Nimona.
Nimona's reaction to this backstory is my absolute favorite part of the chapter. Because she doesn't do the whole, oh, poor you routine. She gets angry.
She validates his rage. She sees the hypocrisy of the institution instantly. She says, are you kidding? You got the boot for his bad attitude? She sees the game is rigged.
And she asks him, and now they've got you locked into a system where you can't win. Doesn't that make you mad?
That question just cuts right through his composure. He spent years repressing that anger, channeling it into these performative plans. And Mona looks at him and says,